The summit chamber aboard the interstellar outpost buzzed with quiet anticipation. Commander Reese Calderon entered through the sliding glass bulkhead, his tall frame nearly brushing the top of the door. His boots thudded softly against the polished obsidian floor, their rhythm sharp and deliberate. Around the oval conference table, delegates from a dozen alien worlds turned to look, each more curious than the last. Reese's attention, however, locked onto the tiniest figure present. Sitting on a suspended chair built to elevate her to eye level with the others, Nira Tal sat still as a stone. Even with the lift, she barely hit 4 feet. Her translucent violet skin glowed faintly under the station lights, and her amber eyes didn't blink as they followed Reese's approach. Silver strands of hair, braided into tiny loops, shimmered like strands of comet tail. Her long ears twitched once. "So this is who Earth sends?" she asked, her voice delicate but edged like a razor. "I thought you'd be more evolved. Not a skyscraper with arms." Reese smirked as he lowered himself into a seat across from her. "And I expected a warrior, not a dollhouse figurine in battle paint. Tell me, do you run on batteries or just sass?" A hush settled across the room. Some of the counselors exchanged glances, but Nira's gaze gleamed with amusement rather than offense. She leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. "Careful, ground ape," she murmured, her voice now low and smooth. "You're standing on a cliff made of your own arrogance. One step too far and you fall." Reese leaned back, comfortable, confident. "Falling isn't my style. But I hear short tempers fall fast. Tell me, Nira, do you actually fight, or just throw shade and hope no one checks?" The glow of her skin pulsed brighter, like a warning light. "I've torn down opponents that made you look like a house pet. Brute size doesn't matter when you're faster than thought." "Opponents 3 times my size?" Reese raised one eyebrow. "What were you fighting, mining bots?" A blue-scaled ambassador from the Dural system cleared his throat. "Might we return to discussing the treaty?" "In a moment," Nira replied coolly, still staring at Reese. "I just need to clear up a little misunderstanding. Being tall doesn't mean being competent." Reese leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And being small doesn't make you quick. Sometimes it just makes you hard to spot." Nira's eyes narrowed. "Are you calling me insignificant?" "Just saying, the box doesn't always match the label." "Would you like a demonstration?" she asked, her voice like the edge of broken crystal. Reese's expression didn't change. "You offering a fight or a dance?" The tension in the chamber thickened. Nira stood swiftly on her platform, her movements graceful and sharp. "Cute," she said with venom. "You think this is a joke. But when I'm done, the only thing laughing will be the medics." "You're adorable when you're mad," Reese teased. "Do you come in travel size?" The council members leaned forward slightly, riveted. Nira began to pace, her steps light but intense. "You don't know who I am, Earthman. But you will." "Try me," Reese said, nodding slightly. Nira stopped pacing and looked him square in the eyes. "I'm Nira Tal, Blade Master of the Arkan Order, victor of the Black Rift Siege, and the one who held Sector B11 when your fleet couldn't even find the fight. I don't bluff. I win." Reese's smile tightened but didn't fade. "A solid resume. No wonder they let you talk for your people." "They sent me because I finish what others fumble," she shot back. "You seem good at flapping your jaw. Let's see if you can move with it." Reese stood slowly, his frame towering. "I haven't even started yet." Without warning, Nira leapt from her perch, landing with feline grace. She was small, but her presence hit like a blast wave. "Make your move, big guy," she said, eyes gleaming. Reese looked down, now more curious than amused. Her stance was perfect, her posture coiled like a drawn bow. Whatever he'd thought of her before, she'd just changed the equation. "You know," he said after a beat, "this negotiation just became worth my time." Nira grinned, all teeth and danger. "Glad you're finally awake." Around them, the delegates sat frozen, uncertain whether to intervene or just watch. The peace talks had taken an unexpected turn, one driven less by diplomacy and more by sparks, combat, and challenge. Something deeper than politics had entered the room. Without hesitation, Reese extended his hand toward her. "Commander Reese Calderon," he said calmly. "Earth Space Corps. You've been entertaining company." Nira eyed his hand for a moment longer than necessary before placing her much smaller one into his. It nearly vanished in his grasp, but her grip was like steel. "Nira Tal," she replied. "And just so we're clear, this wasn't a spar. This was stretching before the real event." Their hands met, and for a moment, something shifted. It wasn't just tension now, it was recognition. The kind that starts in the eyes and says more than words ever could. The fire between them hadn't dimmed. It had changed, sharpened. The other delegates and even the conference walls seemed to vanish, replaced by a silent pulse neither fully understood. This was no longer just politics. It was personal. The true battle, the one that had nothing to do with treaties, hadn't even begun yet. And then the entire station howled. A high-pitched, gut-punching alarm tore through the corridors like a war cry. Reese was out of his quarters in seconds, zipping up his uniform jacket as he bolted toward command. Talks had been abruptly suspended. The long-range sensors had flagged a fast-moving fleet of unknown ships entering the outer perimeter. No one knew who they were. By the time Reese reached the control deck, Nira was already there, gliding between glowing consoles like liquid light. Her diplomatic robes were gone, replaced by sleek combat-grade armor that shimmered with her natural glow. Her silver braids swung with each movement, and her eyes burned with battle clarity. "Status!" Reese barked at the station commander. 12 vessels, unidentified. "Fast and coordinated," the Andari technician answered, his six-fingered hands dancing across the projectors. "They've issued a demand. Surrender all delegates and classified cargo within 10 minutes. Reese's face hardened. Classic hostage leverage. They'll ransom the delegates for political gains. He glanced at Nira. "Your people come with a backup plan, I assume?" She gave a dry laugh. "Same as yours, I bet. Fight until there's no one left to surrender." She pointed to the tactical screen. "But look at their approach pattern. That's not random." Reese studied the formation. It was tight, surgical, not the scattershot chaos of space marauders. These aren't freelancers. This is a trained squadron. Nira nodded once. "Exactly. This isn't a raid, it's a message. But who's it really for?" Before he could answer, the entire structure jolted under weapons impact. Lights flickered, then switched to emergency mode. A crimson hue soaked the room, casting eerie shadows as backup power engaged. "Shields down to 60%, the commander reported. "They're gunning straight for our comm towers." "They want us isolated," Reese muttered, already moving to the weapons console. His fingers moved with practiced precision. No distress calls. Smart. He looked sideways at Nira. "Think your ship can handle 3 of them?" Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "It can handle 10. If you keep their gunners off my tail." "Try me," Reese shot back, echoing her earlier tone. In seconds, they were operating in sync. What had been verbal sparring turned into instinctive partnership. Reese's human instincts anticipated moves before they were visible. Nira's razor-edge calculations picked apart the enemy's strategy like a surgeon with a scalpel. "Enemy flanking your 6, Reese warned, eyes locked on the holomap. "Copy that. I'm diving for their commander. Cover me." Her craft, a silver blur, slipped through the pirates' ranks like lightning through clouds. Agile and unpredictable, it weaved past cannon fire and tracking locks, flickering just out of reach. Reese could hardly believe what he saw. She was rewriting physics with every move. "How the hell is she flying like that?" he muttered. "Arkan Order Flight Doctrine," Nira answered calmly over the comm. "You learn to turn your weaknesses into weapons. Not something your size-obsessed engineers teach." Reese chuckled despite the rising tension. "Show off. You haven't seen anything yet." With that, she spiraled into a corkscrew maneuver, unleashing a hail of laser fire mid-spin. 3 pirate ships burst into stuttering silence, their systems fried and drifting lifelessly in space. "All right," Reese admitted, watching the carnage. "Now I'm impressed." "Save it," she replied, though he could hear the pride in her voice. "We've got bigger fish to roast." The largest enemy vessel, previously idling at the edge of the fray, now surged forward. Energy built in its core weapons systems. Enough to erase a moon. That's their leader, Reese muttered, reading the readout. The rest were just cover fire. And now it's mad, Nira said. Her ship veered toward it without hesitation. Let's see what kind of teeth it's hiding. Reese could barely keep his eyes on her as the massive ship fired a burst of volatile energy across her path. It should have vaporized her. But she wasn't there. She had already moved, dodging the blast before it even began. Her ship flowed through the void like it was dancing with death. I can't break its shields alone, she reported, breath quick from the strain. Its core tech's reinforced. We'll need to double punch the weak point. Reese didn't hesitate. I'll draw its fire. You line up the kill shot. Their outer hulls layered too thick, Reese muttered, scanning the tactical overlay, his mind flying through every possible scenario. Then maybe we don't try to break through, he said suddenly, a plan forming fast. What if we make them shut it down themselves? Nira glanced over, not questioning his instinct. I'm listening. You keep hammering them, give them the impression we're focused on penetrating their shield grid. Meanwhile, I'll redirect the station's main plasma lance and target their power network. If I can overload their internal relays, they'll have no choice but to drop shields to stop a cascade failure. And if you miscalculate? She asked evenly. I won't, Reese answered, calm but absolute. The next minutes were a razor-edge dance of timing and nerve. Nira's fighter darted through the crossfire like a phantom, forcing the enemy to chase her shadow while Reese rerouted the station's ancient artillery, never designed for finesse, toward a pinpoint strike. Nira, now, he barked over comms. She peeled away just as he fired. The pulse from the main cannon roared across the stars and struck the flagship dead on. For a second, its shields held. Then they fractured and fell. Right on the mark, Nira breathed. And with that, her fighter dove like a hunting hawk. Twin beams lanced from her craft, tearing into the exposed flagship. She wasn't just attacking, she was dismantling it. Weapons, propulsion, power, stripped away with surgical precision. This is your final chance, she declared over open comms. Power down or I go for life support. The rest of the pirate fleet blinked and surrendered. Every vessel broadcasted immediate submission. Silence followed. Then the room exploded in movement as station lights returned and systems blinked back to life. Reese, still at the command deck, finally allowed himself to look at Nira, not as a tactical ally or a potential threat, but as herself. Her fighter docked. The canopy lifted. She climbed out, armor gleaming under the station lights, hair wild and free from the helmet. Reese felt his breath catch, just for a second. That was some of the finest piloting I've ever seen, he said as she approached. She looked up at him, cheeks flushed with the heat of exertion and adrenaline. You didn't do too bad yourself, she said with a half-smile. Sharp shot. Saved my tail. They stood in quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes after a battle, alive, alert, and very aware of one another. Something had changed, and Reese felt it in his chest like an ache he hadn't known was there. You know, he said more gently now, when I called you cute back there, I was being a jackass. You're not cute, Nira. You're astonishing. Her violet glow warmed into a soft, faint pink, her eyes flicking down briefly before returning to his. Then I owe you something too. You're not just some musclehead stumbling around the galaxy. You're a warrior, Reese Calderon. The use of his name hit differently. He smiled. Just Reese. And for what it's worth, he added, kneeling to meet her eye to eye, I'm starting to understand why the Arkan Order chose you. She stepped closer, studying him. What do you see? She asked softly. He looked into her eyes, seeing not the fighter, not the legend, but the person beneath. Someone who makes me want to be better. The noise of the command center, the after-action buzz, all of it melted away. Only they remained, facing each other in a quiet space no war could touch. Later, the celebration in the main hall roared with joy and relief. Drinks poured freely, music pulsed from unseen speakers, and diplomats toasted survival. But Reese stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. He should have felt satisfied. victorious. Instead, he just felt uneasy. Behind him, a soft voice broke the silence. Gloom doesn't suit you, Reese. Turned. Nira stood just beyond the threshold, her combat armor gone. In its place, a gown that shimmered like nebula dust, alive with starlight. Her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders, and every inch of her glowed with subtle power. You clean up well, he said, voice rougher than intended. She stepped beside him at the viewport. Just thinking, she asked. Dangerous habit, he replied, smiling faintly. Mind if I join you? He motioned toward the empty stretch beside him. Galactic freedom. They stood in silence. But not the awkward kind. The kind where something bigger than either of them filled the space. When I saw you this morning, Nira finally said, I figured you were just another tall Earthman convinced bigger meant better. Reese smirked. And now? Now I think you're still arrogant, but you've got the skill to justify it. Which is frankly annoying. He chuckled. When I first saw you, I thought you had something to prove. That the attitude was compensating. And now? Now I think you're exactly as fierce as you need to be. His tone shifted. You saved us all, Nira. What you did out there, it was brilliance in motion. Her glow deepened, a warm hue. We saved them. You took a shot no one else would have even attempted. You were exactly where I needed you. I trusted you, Reese said, turning toward her fully. She met his gaze. That's the point, Reese. Trust is everything in a fight. You gave me your trust without pause, Nira said quietly. Reese dropped to one knee again, so their eyes met without strain. You earned it. The only question now is, what do we do with it? Nira studied his face, her gaze intense but unreadable. That depends. What do you want to do with it? The silence that followed was charged, not empty, not awkward. It was choice and chance bundled into a breath. Reese reached for her, slow and deliberate. If she wanted distance, it was hers. But instead, she stepped closer, just enough for his hand to brush her jaw, his fingers sliding gently to rest against her cheek. I want to know who you really are, he said softly. Not the warrior. Not the title. Just you. Nira's breath hitched. That's not exactly a safe request, Commander. I don't do safe. I've never been the cautious type, Reese replied, his thumb gently stroking the edge of her face. Especially when something this rare is at stake. She leaned into the contact, her eyes closing briefly, just long enough for vulnerability to crack through her walls. When she opened them again, the tension had shifted entirely. My quarters are isolated, she whispered. If you'd rather talk somewhere less exposed. Reese's pulse thundered in his chest. Are you sure? I wouldn't say it if I wasn't, she replied, clasping his hand in both of hers. But understand, intimacy for my people isn't like it is for yours. It's layered, sensory, immersive. Then show me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nira's living space was smaller than Reese's but elegant, curved walls draped in gossamer cloths that shimmered with embedded stardust. The lighting was soft, designed to flow with her natural bioluminescence. She moved to the center of the space, then paused, suddenly hesitant. I don't know how to be anything but what I am, she said. I'm not delicate. I'm not simple. Reese approached her slowly, placing his hands lightly at her waist. I didn't come here for simple. I came for you. As you are. Entirely. Her eyes widened just slightly, surprise mingled with desire and something more fragile. I'm so much smaller than you, Reese. What if I can't meet your expectations? His only answer was to lift her gently until her face was level with his. You couldn't disappoint me if you tried. Their kiss was hesitant at first, like a handshake between souls. Her lips were warm, flavored faintly of citrus and something unplaceable. She trembled slightly but not from fear. Then she pulled him closer, surprisingly strong for her size, her fingers weaving into his hair, her glow intensifying into radiant gold. When they finally parted, her breathing was shallow. Your people don't glow when they feel this way, do they? Reese looked at her, her luminous skin radiating warmth, shifting from silver blue to gold. No, he said with all. Is that what's happening? Among other things, Nira replied, cheeks gleaming. We express through touch, through light. What you're seeing is raw emotion. And what are you feeling? She didn't hesitate. Desire. Connection. Something I didn't know I could feel with anyone, until now. He carried her gently to the bed, an arc-shaped alcove lined with layered pillows and heat-reactive fabric. We go at your pace. Her soft laugh melted him. I've been imagining this since you first insulted me in that chamber. I'm not interested in slow. What followed was a symphony of exploration. Reese discovered that Nira's light was an extension of her emotion, pleasure cascading in shimmering pulses that danced along the curved ceiling like constellations being born. Her body, though small, carried strength he hadn't anticipated. Her hands were precise, her movements intuitive, and her presence engulfed him. And Nira, she learned that Reese's size came with unmatched tenderness, that his mind moved as quickly as hers, that his reverence for her wasn't performative, it was real. Each time he whispered her name, it settled into her like gravity. They moved together like two halves of a song the stars had written in secret. Afterward, the glow in the room dimmed to a restful silver. Nira's body curled against his, fitting perfectly beneath the crook of his arm. Reese traced the length of her spine with his fingertips, slow and thoughtful. This changes everything, she said sleepily. Does it? He asked, brushing his lips against her hair. I think it complicates things. Reese exhaled. Feels like it makes everything clearer to me. How? Because now I know what I'm really fighting for. Not just orders or alliances. You. She tilted her face up, eyes unreadable. We're from different stars, Reese. Different blood, biology, expectations. You can't ignore that. I'm an officer trained in impossible odds, he replied, a crooked grin on his face. And I'm good at logistics. Nira laughed, soft and genuine. I guess we'll see, won't we? We will, he said, pulling her tighter. And in the quiet that followed, with the stars wheeling past the viewport like whispered futures, they held each other. Because the galaxy was vast, cold, relentless. But right here, in a hidden corner of it, two souls had found each other across the void. And that, somehow, made everything feel infinite. The days that followed moved like waves, surging with duty, but quieter beneath the surface. Repairs across the station began swiftly. Delegates returned to their chambers, shaken but alive. The peace summit resumed with renewed urgency, as if surviving the attack had jolted everyone awake. But for Reese Calderon, everything had shifted. He still ran briefings, still reviewed tactical data and filed reports. But each task felt different now, filtered through a new lens. He was no longer just executing orders. He was protecting something that went beyond command. And Niratal? She hadn't vanished into the bureaucracy like the other diplomats. She remained present, sometimes in the control deck, sometimes walking the station's perimeter corridors with that quiet, thoughtful poise that made others instinctively give her room. They didn't always talk. Often, just being near each other was enough. One evening, Reese found her once again on the observation deck. No music. No celebration. Just stars. You keep ending up here, he said, stepping beside her. It's the only place that feels honest, she replied without turning. The stars don't pretend. Reese folded his arms. You do. She finally glanced up at him, a faint glow coloring her cheeks. Everyone does. Even warriors. They stood there a moment longer, the galaxy rolling past them like a living canvas. I've been offered command of the diplomatic escort fleet, Reese said eventually. A long-term post. Multi-system patrol, direct line to the council. That's quite the honor. I haven't accepted yet. Nira turned to him, studying his face carefully. Because of me? No, he said. Because of us. Because of what this could be. There was, clear and unflinching. Nira stepped closer, her voice softer now. My people aren't used to this. We train for war. We speak in strategy and efficiency. Emotion is more dangerous than a blade. And yet, Reese said, you let me in. You pushed your way in. He smiled. True. She paused, then said something that surprised even herself. If you go, I'd come with you. Reese blinked. You'd leave the order? I'd take a leave from it. I've given them everything. Maybe now it's time to give something to myself. He searched her face, not for doubt, but for hesitation. There was none. Wherever we go, he said, it won't be easy. Good, she replied. I don't trust anything that comes easy. They stood in silence again. But this time it was filled with purpose. The stars beyond the glass weren't just scenery now. They were potential, paths unknowns. And for once, Reese wasn't afraid of the unknown. Not with her beside him. He reached down, taking her hand. Small, warm, and glowing faintly gold. You're still dangerous, Nira Tal, he murmured. And you're still arrogant, Reese Calderon. They smiled. Then, somewhere behind them, the soft chime of the intercom broke the moment. All delegates and senior officers to command. Final debrief commencing. Nira's eyes stayed on him. You ready? I am now. They walked out together, side by side, not as captain and warrior, not as Earth and Arkan, but as something entirely new. Something fragile, maybe, but real. Because the truth was, they had survived a battle, but the greater journey was still ahead. And that was the real fight. Not against pirates, or politics, or even distance. It was about holding on to what they'd found. Across galaxies, species, scars, and second chances. Two warriors from two worlds. And somehow, the universe had made room for both of them. Together,